Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast with myself and my Hagestelt co-host, Chris Rasick. This week, we're going to be talking about how to run an Amazon business as an introvert. So if accepting an invitation to a party makes you want to crawl into the safety of your favorite blanket, or networking sounds like torture, this episode might be for you. Because even as an introvert, which I would imagine actually both Chris and I probably say that we're both introverts, it's still important to rub elbows with our peers and speak with others in the space. And it's a lot less scary than what a lot of people think. But before we dive in, you guys know the drill. We spend literally minutes getting ready for each one of these podcast episodes. So if you get some value from this, do us a solid, pound the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment, share this with your friends. The best way for us to grow this podcast is by getting you to interact with the show and letting us know you want more content like this. And of course, we'll keep showing up and doing these episodes for you guys. So let's dive in.
So we're talking about introversion in what seems like an extroverted business world. You know, you have a lot of talk right now is about salesmanship, and a lot of it is just out and out extroversion. You know, making these contacts and going to trade shows and you know, physically in person, the real people-y stuff. You know, that's kind of how we look at it. But there is a way, there's a path to success as an introvert, and in fact, we might end up convincing you in the end that it's kind of a superpower in all actuality. So for those of us that lean towards the introverted side, you know, the idea of traditional networking probably makes you want to hide under your desk, right? So how do we build connections that essentially are crucial without turning into social butterflies overnight, you know, without changing our complete makeup? So today we're talking about actionable strategies that you can leverage. You can leverage your strengths, right? And build genuine relationships and unlock new opportunities in the world of Amazon. Think of it like hacking the networking game for those of us who recharge with a good book rather than a crowded room. We'll start with story time. In 1954, a young man named Warren Buffett stepped off a train in New York City. His pockets were full of money that he had saved up from his paper route. And he walked off the train with a head full of investment ideas, right? The reason he was in New York City, he was there to meet Benjamin Graham, right? That he was an idol of his. He's the legendary father of value investing and author of the book, The Intelligent Investor. Buffett was an introvert by nature, but he had read Graham's book 8 times and was determined to study under him at Columbia Business School. So as Buffett walked into Graham's office at Channon Building on 42nd Street, there's no way he could have known that was the moment that would be a catalyst for a journey that would transform not only his life, but the lives of countless investors who, like him, prefer poring over financial statements as opposed to schmoozing at cocktail parties. Now, I don't think I have to add the ending of what Warren Buffett went on to accomplish and his connection with Charlie Munger and Berkshire Hathaway. You can look that up on your own. It's it's pretty impressive. But yeah, so maybe Buffett isn't your jam. Who are other famous introverts? Bill Gates, self-described as an introvert. Elon Musk, right? Those two, they use the power of their introverted ways to sit and analyze and really kind of stew over the mechanisms of what they built. And obviously they built these incredible things with the powers that they had and their intelligence, which all stemmed from their introverted ways. Not so techie, not so founder. You want some other examples? How about Stephen King and JK Rowling? Those two are both introverted, admittedly, self-admittedly, and they find that the introverted ways help them really sink in and get into the flow of creating the worlds that they create. It helps them. It's helped them achieve massive success as authors. So Buffett and the others, their stories, they're not unique, right? In fact, it's a narrative that plays out daily in the world of Amazon FBA, right? They're introverted sellers are constantly grappling with the what could be considered an age-old dilemma, right? How do you build a network when the very thought of networking makes you want to retreat to the comfort of your computer screen, right? It's OA is the introvert's preferred sourcing method, I would imagine, but we got to do a little bit more than just sourcing on our computers, right? And the answer, it turns out, lies not in changing who you are. That's too big of an ask, but it's about understanding the hidden strengths that introverts bring to the table. It's about recognizing that the same qualities that make large networking events feel overwhelming, the deep thinking, the careful observation, the ability to form meaningful one-on-one connections, those are precisely the traits that can set you apart in a digital landscape.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So two things. Number one, I love the whole Benjamin Graham, Warren Buffett story. I also, and you didn't go into it, but one of my favorite things is what Benjamin Graham said to Warren Buffett when Warren Buffett said, "Hey, I really like to work for you for free." And I see Benjamin Graham looking over the top of some, spreadsheet or stock ticker, and he just says, "You're overpriced." What an absolute punch in the gut. Yeah, to some like kid.
Right.
But no, what you said here, kind of building your talent, I think a lot of people under index, what they're capable of or what they're able to do. And I heard a term for recently called find what your bear on the bicycle is. And I like this. It was, you see a bear, no big deal. It's a bear. You see a bicycle, all right. But you see a bear riding a bicycle, and you're kind of like, holy shit, look at that. And so, what things can you combine to create your bear on a bicycle that makes it easy for people to want to network with you? And it's fairly easy to show that kind of thing off nowadays. I mean, you can easily post to social media, even under, an anonymous account. Not my favorite thing in the world. I would prefer that people
Right.
didn't do that, but there are some very, very famous anon accounts on social media, particularly Twitter, but anyway, hopefully you'll find your bear on a bicycle while we go through this. And one of the things is you need to understand what introversion in business really is. It's kind of there's a common misconception that introverts can't be successful entrepreneurs when, I mean, hundreds of years of history shows us that is absolutely not the case. In reality, I'm not going to say most, but there are a ton of successful business leaders who are introverts, and they've just kind of learned to leverage their natural strengths, which everyone has. And unfortunately, we can't tell you exactly what your natural strength is, but if you ask a couple of your close friends who are willing to be candid with you, they probably can. Introverts in business often bring some sort of unique strength. It could be deep listening skills. It could be thoughtful analysis. It could be, that ability to form really good relationships or even just, network on a one-to-one basis where a one-to-many kind of feels uncomfortable. And if you find that, it can be incredibly powerful.
Definitely. So first step is we need to be someone worth networking with, right? And this isn't going to be, don't take the default that this is building what you don't have already. A lot of this is probably going to be realization of the fact that you do have more to bring to the table than you realize, right? It doesn't mean you have to be a huge seller or you have to be the number one expert on a certain topic, right? Simply being present and making a consistent effort, that's a valuable currency in networking. And Chris and I have, we've gone through phases, and we're restarting. We're trying to build our social media, especially on Twitter. We both prefer that. And I see that with the people that respond to my tweets. It's a lot of the same people, but if they show up and they're consistent, there becomes a connection. And I've actually gotten to the point where in my Twitter DMs, I've traded leads back and forth, it just based on something that was said on social media, and it's gone from there. We both trade. I gave a lead to this person, the person came back and reciprocated, and we actually made some money just off of talking on social media. So the other option you have is to build expertise, right? And it's probably the best route to build expertise. If you don't think you're proficient in something right now, take the thing you like doing the most. And personal example is sourcing. The treasure hunt is everything for me. The residual joy from finding something, that energy carries itself through the full process, shipping it in, selling it, and all the other tasks that follow the sourcing. That's the high that I'm working off of. So I became a good sourcer, and it's easy to learn. It's easy to dig into a topic that you like doing, so don't make it harder than it has to be, but just focus on getting really good at one aspect of the business, whatever your favorite aspect of the business, that skill and your passion for it, that's going to become a valuable resource for other sellers. And then probably the best advice is to be authentic. People are far more likely to connect with you if you're a genuine person instead of trying to be something that you're not. That's going to be easy to see through.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, to do all this, the easiest way to do it is to leverage the platforms that are already there. And there's tons of them. Social media it's an absolute gold mine, especially for introverted arbitrage sellers. Are there local in-person meetups in a lot of places? Yeah, absolutely. Can you make meaningful connections there? Of course, but it might take the rest of your day to get your strength back. Whereas, on the computer, you can sit behind the safety of your keyboard, and it's not like there are not a ton of places to go and find online friends. There are Facebook groups, which of course we'd love to have you in FBA today, the Facebook group. As part of us trying to rebuild social media, we're trying to rebuild that group and make it the best place for Amazon sellers. There are Discord servers. There are both paid and free Discord servers. I will have to say that of the free ones that I'm in, you need to be very careful because a lot of them are worth exactly what you pay for them. But then there are others that are worth every penny. I'll name a few. Number one, FBA Basecamp is run by friend of the show Jeff Storch, and that is a good free resource. If you want a paid resource, right now, I would say go to the Buy Box, which is run by another friend of the show, Saul. There are school communities. FBA Today has a free school community as well. Though we vet the people who come in a little bit harder than we normally do, just to make sure that everyone is a real person, not just looking to, try to get leads for their VA services or things like that. And then there's one place I would tell you to stay away from. It is the seller forums. Every now and again, you can find a rare gem on the seller forums, but for the most part, you want to stay away from that place. But all of these places will give you an opportunity to provide some very meaningful or well-researched information to others, just sharing your thoughts, sharing your stream of consciousness. And every one of I like to think of those as reps or shots on goal. Every time you post something, it's kind of a shot on goal. And of course, the goal is making, seller friends, or building your own little mastermind, your own little, the 5 people you hang out with the most. And it's going to take a lot of shots on goal to do that. And so it'll feel a lot of times like you're talking to a wall. But if you can get comfortable with that and do it over and over and over again, it will absolutely be worth it. And then one of the other things that I would suggest, if you're going to post on social media and leverage, all of these platforms that are available to you, is be a reply guy. Make sure that you're not just posting things, but you're also replying, whether it's a Facebook group or in Discord or on Twitter. Reply when you see someone, and even as a new seller, ask questions in your replies. In my opinion, I love questions from everybody. I think that, I have this rule that there is no such thing as a stupid question. The only stupid question is the one that goes unasked. But some of my favorite questions come from brand new or newer sellers, because they are looking at things through a different lens, or a fresh lens, or whatever lens has been crafted by their own life experience outside of the Amazon space, where a lot of times tenured Amazon sellers can be looking through a jaded lens on occasion. And so new sellers can offer a unique opportunity to be able to rethink something that maybe you have held as an opinion or as a fact for a long time. Um, Now, one of the other superpowers of social media, especially Twitter, is it's very easy to curate lists and topic specific feeds. I've been able to follow several people's curated list of Amazon sellers and things like that, so that I can go and easily see what's happening kind of in real time. And then there are places like LinkedIn, which Amazon sellers don't talk about enough, but there are wholesale sellers who absolutely crush it over there, reaching out to suppliers, reaching out to prep center owners and 3PL providers, even, working with other arbitrage sellers and things like that, who just spend more time on LinkedIn because that's where their professional network is. Uh, give you another thing that LinkedIn is good for. If you ever have a problem with Amazon, can actually find people who work at Amazon and reach out, and sometimes they can point you in the right direction or maybe help you solve a problem. But this is an easy way for introverts to really be able to shine. You don't have to go out. You don't have to, take off the pajamas. You can just get in there and try to be genuine, be authentic, and be helpful as much as you possibly can, even if it's just for 30 minutes a day. And you'll be surprised how quickly you'll grow your network.
Absolutely. And that's not even an exhaustive list. As you were listing those off, Reddit is another possibility. I am just a lurker on Reddit, but the entrepreneur subreddit is a wealth of information, and there are actually some really, really good conversations that are being had on there. I don't dare reply. I'm far too sensitive for the Reddit community's brand of discourse. But now there's Reddit, Substack is another place. There's Blue Sky. There's tons of options to where you can settle in, find the one that you like, and start showing up every day. And now I'm gonna say a phrase here, and it's gonna sound cliche, maybe eye roll inducing. But the question that's going to come up that the introvert is going to ask is, okay, that's great in theory, but what do I talk about? Right. And what you're really doing, and this sounds a little more business woo than it really is, but you're building your personal brand is essentially what you're doing. Your content, the theme, your attitude towards Amazon, and the theme of your comments as you post them are going to establish your personal brand, whether you realize it or not. So don't let personal brand, don't let the phrase intimidate you. Creating content it's a great way for introverts to network passively, just by being present, again, like we mentioned. You don't have to position yourself as a guru. You don't have to give advice. The imposter syndrome is something that we're easily prone to as introverts. So that's uncomfortable to try to dictate, the way you think things are or should be. There's always somebody more experienced than you. There's always someone who's sold more than you. So it's easy to talk yourself out of posting advice. However, Chris and I both we've invested in courses even on building a Twitter following and stuff like that, and how to post and all this stuff. One of the common suggestions, I think every course that I've gone through suggests to build in public. You probably heard that phrase. That can apply even as an Amazon seller as well. That can simply just be documenting your journey. There's a charm to someone who is open about their failures. So and the mistakes that you made. So don't be afraid to share that. If you position yourself, I like to think I do it. I've got a bit of an attitude now, and there is a certain amount of snark which may be associated with thinking I'm an authority, but I largely post as somebody who's still learning. A lot of my stuff is born from what I like to think is a constant open mind. As I'm trying to understand things and not get jaded, not get set in my ways. And it's kind of how I post. And but I have experience. I was a manager of a department in a bank in corporate America. So there's experience associated with it. And all I do is try to connect the dots. Like, hey, this is similar to this, and then you kind of zoom out and you take the broad concepts and you can share that. So you can take your personal experience, connect some dots, and share that. And it's not from a position of, hey, listen to me, my course is coming out soon. That's not what it is. So document your journey, no matter where you are. Document your mistakes. You'll be amazed at the advice that you get and the support even. You can ask for advice, if there's a situation that you're stuck on. We do live Q&A shows, where people take advantage of that, the captive audience, to get their questions answered. It can also be done as posting. Just put it out there like, hey, here I have this situation and I'm stumped. What would you suggest? People like to help other people.
Thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co-host Chris Rasick has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal-tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show.
There's the it's kind of a secret though, but there's ways to phrase things where if you approach someone and say, hey, could you do me a favor? It initially increases your chances of getting that person to help you because of human nature. We want to help someone else. So, or what you can also do, you can take current events, news that's going on, and just wonder in public as well. Just wonder how it's going to affect your business. I wonder what the long-term effects of Amazon taking on Shein and Temu, with the slower delivery of items, the Amazon haul, is that what they call it?
Yeah.
wonder about that in public, and then you start interacting. People are going to respond to it. There's certainly no shortage of opinions on
Mhm.
social media. So these are all easy ways, to just start posting consistently and generating some connections and interactions.
Yeah, that last one, that's got to be one of my favorites. Is just kind of wondering in public. And I
Mhm.
like that, and I like that term. It's you can allow. I don't know if it's just me or if it's everybody, but there's kind of this. There's this voice that's always going. I should probably speak to somebody about that. That's always kind of asking questions and thinking about something. Um, but if you just write down what that little voice is saying, I actually did it just yesterday, and it created a ton of feedback. Now, and
Mhm.
I was curious, what Amazon's thinking is on increasing the number of units required for certain brands to get ungated from 10, to 100 or 200 or 300. And, is it, eh, if I just take this out, is it because, Nike, for example, is that those items are actually getting robbed from trains? That's a real story. Like, there are hundreds of thousands of dollars of Nike being robbed from trains out west. Is it, or is it some other reason? And
Yeah.
I mean, people want to give their opinion, and it sounded like me being critical of Amazon, and I'm not. I'm legitimately trying to, you know, figure it out in my own head. I don't see the reason from the seller standpoint, but what could be the reasons from Amazon's standpoint. That way I can understand it as a seller and then figure out a way through it, around it, or over it in my own business. And you'll get tons and tons of opinion. Um,
Yeah. You know what? And another great thing about the thing about wondering in public like that is it's open ended.
mhm,
And because there's the one thing for sure, the one thing we need less of are definitive opinions of what we decide is going on. Wondering in public and just kind of throwing stuff out there and saying, why are they doing? I wonder why they're doing this, and just kind of you're essentially just setting the a place setting for the topic, and then the discussion will follow.
mhm,
Whereas if you say, you know what, Amazon needs to hire 1,000 new customer service reps. They shouldn't be relying on AI, blah blah blah. So now you've written your opinion, and I have to now take a side,
mhm.
right? I have to decide if I agree or disagree with you, and then go from there. And that stifles the conversation, you know,
Yep.
and that compartmentalizes where that conversation can go. Where something more open ended, like, what do you think? Why do you think they're doing this? What do you think the end game is? It's a much broader, more helpful conversation in the end.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, I'll be honest with you, this could be your bear on a bicycle moment, because there does not seem that there are enough people out there who are able to hold two ideas at the same time, even if they kind of go against each other.
Mhm.
Like, for example, I can be critical of Amazon when it comes to the high amount of ungating, and the fact that I think uh, it over indexes paying against the smaller Amazon seller. But at the same time, I can be absolutely bullish on the Amazon opportunity still. And most people can't do that. And so if you're able to position things in that way, you're going to get a lot of conversation started. And a lot of it is going to be people only being able to choose one side, but you're going to find your people in those who are like, you know what? Yeah, I can see why you'd be bullish. I can also see why we can be critical of this one particular thing. And like you said, it just creates good conversation that allows I can't remember who said it, but rub and polish our brains against each other, which
Mhm.
is something important to do. And then I want to bring up one other point, and this maybe just a little thing that kind of frustrates me, but you know, when you call it documenting your journey, uh, you get you'll get a lot of people who might give you trouble. I've seen this a lot in the Amazon space and kind of teasing people who document their journey, but you reframe that to building in public and everyone wants to see you build in public. So
Right.
it's the same thing. And don't worry about what you call it, and don't let anybody give you a hard time over it, because building in public is good. It's good for you as a journal, and something you can look back on and be like, oh man, you know, one of my favorite features of Facebook is actually the memories feature,
Hmm.
because I can see what did I post 10 years ago, and I can literally cringe at something that I posted, an idea, a thought, even the way that I phrased a question compared to how I would do that today. And it reminds you of how much growth and learning that you've had. And then it reminds me how much growth and opportunity for learning I have ahead of me still, because
Yep.
it's this never ending process.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. If you're not cringing at what you said 5, 10 years ago, um, you might have bigger problems.
yeah, absolutely. So, let's talk a little bit about making it easier on yourself, because while a lot of us are chronically online, matter of fact, there's a study that says that people watch 82 hours of content on watch or ingest 82 hours of content on the internet every single week, across social media platforms. You don't want to be married to social media. It can turn into doom scrolling. And honestly, you need to be sourcing instead. So if you happen to be a night owl, like this is when it's quiet at night, everyone's in bed, everyone's sleeping. That tends to be when my inner dialogue gets a little bit louder. And so you can use things like social media scheduling tools. The thought that I had about Amazon the other day about their gating process, it came fairly late at night. And so I use a tool called Tweet Hunter. You can use a tool
Mhm.
like Hype Fury or Buffer or Hootsuite, or even the native scheduling tools right inside of Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. All of them have them now built in, and you can type out your train of thought in the moment and schedule it for later when more people might be online, and give it a better opportunity to get out there and breathe and be seen by everyone else. If you're not sure about how fleshed out your ideas are, you can use things like Perplexity and ChatGPT to be able to ask it questions. I will literally just say, "Hey, here is an idea that I have. Can you ask me some questions so that I can, uh, you know, further this idea or make it more well-rounded or more thought out?" And it will ask you questions about your idea, about your thought, about just about anything. And you can even say, hey, ask me these questions like you're an Amazon seller. Ask me these questions like you're uh, a McKinsey business consultant. I wouldn't do that. They're a little too narrowly trained in their thought processes. But you can ask it to ask you in certain manners. Um, One of my favorite is I'll either put in an article that I've read, or I'll put in something that I'm thinking about, and then I will say, "Hey, what are 5 questions that you think, like someone like James Altucher, who I think is a very good thinker. What are 5 questions that someone like James Altucher would ask after reading this, or after hearing this idea?" And you'll get some very interesting questions that pop out that can allow you to further make sense of your own ideas, or ideas of others even. Uh, and then if you really get into it, maybe you like to write, you can offer people to guest blog, or what's probably more common nowadays is do a guest newsletter segment. I've never had anybody reach out and offer to do some sort of guest newsletter segment, but I would probably accept if the idea was interesting that they wanted to share in my own newsletter. I'm going to use this for a little commercial. If you want to write a guest newsletter segment that goes out to 30,000 plus people in the Amazon community, I would reach out to me. Okay. All my socials are below. You can email me. I would take something like this on. Matter of fact, you know what? I said nobody's ever done this, but only one person has ever done this. You've written a segment or two, I believe. And I have had someone ghostwrite one newsletter for me. And when I think I was sick or something. But I would take this on, especially if you not looking for people who want to advertise their software or course or anything like that. But if you just have an interesting take and you want it shared with a little bit of a wider audience, hit me up. Which takes us nice and easily into the next one about sliding into people's DMs.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? I tell you what, as infrequently as I publish my newsletter, I would love a section to be taken over by somebody else because that's only going to make the next issue that much easier to do. A good example is we brought it up on one of our recent shows. James McConnell had a great blog post about placement fees, and he kind of broke it down. He broke it down in a big way and offered suggestions on how to save some money on shipment costs, right? So something like that, where if that person, I'm not nothing against James, it was a great article, but if he wanted to get extra exposure to his blog post, he could have approached you, and said, hey, let me summarize my article and link to it, right? That's unique content. It's beneficial to you and your audience, right? Because now you have a new voice, you have interesting content, you've exposed your audience to even more within the space, to a new voice and whatnot. So they're bound to be appreciative of that. And then it gets James more traffic to a blog. It's good all the way around, So the mechanism for doing that, like Chris said, is sliding into the DMs. This is probably the only time you will ever catch me offering this advice. However, in the context of this episode, it's a good idea to slide into those DMs. Whatever format that you decide you want to invest your time in, you're going to have, like we alluded to earlier, you're going to have people showing up and making comments. People are going to take to the tone of your voice or your attitude or your thought processes that are going to consistently come through, and they're going to start replying. They're going to start looking for your content, and it's going to stand out to them because they like you. There's something to, they like your voice, they like reading your content, so they're going to gravitate towards you. As they do, as you recognize those people who keep showing up over and over again, obviously that becomes a warm connection as opposed to a cold call. That's the yin and the yang of this. It becomes a warm connection if you want to reach out in the DMs, and you foster you advance the relationship through the DMs. Then you can have the private conversation, get to know the person a little bit better, and who knows what happens from there. And this works in reverse too, not just as the person posting the content. As you consume content on whatever format that you decided to, you're going to see content that you like as well. It's just naturally going to happen. If you see something that you like and the person is consistent and you're like, man, I really like what this person's saying, I like his thought process, his or her thought process, jump in the DMs and just pay him a compliment. Just say, hey, I appreciate, it seems like every single day you're posting something that is so thoughtful. I just want to let you know I appreciate you taking the time to share it with the rest of us. I look forward to your content every single day that I open this app. And that could open up a meaningful long-term relationship, just from a simple act of kindness. So
Mhm.
it's highly underrated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this all should, I hate to use a marketing term here, but all of the things that we've talked about really should kind of act kind of like a funnel. And that funnel should
Hmm.
kind of go toward smaller group networking opportunities. And so, what do I mean by that? It's like joining or creating a mastermind group, and I don't mean some mastermind group that you got to pay $1,000 to, and it's 40, 50 other people or whatever it is. I'm talking an organic group of like-minded people who want to work together on a regular basis. Get together at the metaphorical water cooler and talk about their wins, talk about their troubles, and maybe even hop on a Zoom and source together, or just have some focused time to get work done, where someone's kind of looking over your shoulder, and metaphorically, again, not necessarily uh, cheating off your homework, but just someone on screen to make sure that you've got your head down doing work. Um, Take some time to try to get into some smaller focused workshops or webinars, if they're available or out there. They do exist, and a lot of them can be helpful. And even paying a little bit for them is not always a bad idea. Not sometimes good information is behind a paywall, and even if it's something you already know, just being reminded of it or it being presented in another way can sort of be the gas on the fire that you need to actually use that in a profitable manner. And we just need to be reminded sometimes. I read something recently. Repetition is reality. It's part of the reason why you see the same ad over and over and over again. It's part of the reason that you see news anchors and politicians say the same thing over and over and over again. It's because repetition is reality, and sometimes you need to hear the same thing over and over and over again. We've talked about networking dozens of times across various shows. We've even done one episode just on networking and how to do it, but we've got to bring it back up because sometimes hearing it a different way kind of gets it through to us a little bit more. And then look for look for some ways to meet up locally if you're comfortable with that. I we personally we run a Christmas party every single year. I think that last year was the last year I'll be able to do it out of the house, and we're probably going to need to move to an actual space that's larger because it's getting to be bigger and bigger every year. But it's a great time to be able to meet up with people in real life uh, and just share stories and learn new things and things like that. And there are a lot of local meetups across the country. Some of them are going to be very small. Like one of the biggest ones I know of is down in Miami, and it's great. It's a fantastic meetup. I go down a couple of times a year, and the people who run it are incredibly smart sellers. And if there aren't any, and you're willing to actually be responsible for it, starting one up in your area would be a good thing to do. I did it when I lived back in Ohio. It was incredibly rewarding to meet, once a quarter with people who were local. And you'd be surprised how many people in your area actually do the same thing as you. Um, and it's worth every minute, I promise.
Yeah, and you know what the started. I'm reminded of the mastermind again that I started. Um, I knew I wanted to be a part of a mastermind. Um, didn't know how to run one. Didn't think I had the appeal. Like I wasn't sure why anybody would want to join my mastermind, but turned out and it worked out great. I mean, we wanted it to be a small group. We limited it to 5 people. Um, on purpose, and we were firm on that. And it filled and it stayed full for its duration. It's inactive right now, which that's a whole separate topic. That's been rolling around in my head, but that's for another time. But you know what? And it kind of my pitch on the mastermind is, I didn't realize it at the time, but it's kind of the same as what we're talking about today, right? I was a new seller, but I was hungry. Um, I had a thirst to learn more, um, right? And we were able to get some more experienced sellers, right? And the way I kind of reasoned it after the fact, I didn't realize, I didn't come across this organically, but it's true that as a new seller, um, you have a fresh perspective, right? And I'm reminded of, I just saw somebody say it the other day. They were talking about hiring a VA, and you hear the phrase like, "I'd rather train a new VA from scratch rather than take one on and take on all the bad habits that they have from their previous employer." Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the same concept as this, the appeal that a new seller has to a more experienced seller. It's a fresh set of eyes. Like, Chris, you said it earlier, I wasn't jaded at that time. All the knowledge was fresh, right? So I could recall stuff a little bit better in certain areas, that older sellers may have forgotten about, but you kind of, you wear grooves, you wear out grooves in the floor sometimes as an older seller, so having somebody fresh, having somebody excited, there's also the energy aspect of it. There's a ton of reasons to, that talking to someone who may not be quite as seasoned or accomplished as you are, can still be valuable. It's there's a surprising amount of power, and the mastermind, a ton of good things came from it, including relationships and education and, um, skill improvement, most importantly. So, and that is ultimately, you see where this is going, right? We talked about like the individual social media posting. We moved to small groups, and you're expanding as you go. So if you practice these and you keep kind of widening things out a little bit, eventually you'll be ready for the trade show, I promise, or at least it won't be as terrifying. But the end goal is the long-term relationship, right? And this may be the biggest advantage that an introvert has, um, is the long-term relationship. Um, Introverts often excel in this area, right? Because we have the ability to nurture deep, meaningful connections over time, and that's a valuable skill in numerous ways. Adding value consistently doesn't always mean constant interaction, right? And introverts can focus on sharing high quality insights, just something that you've thought real deep on, and have a well-rounded opinion, which again, you can get from posting open-ended stuff on social media and getting a wide range of opinions. What that's going to do for you is it's going to give you a much more well-rounded view of whatever topic you happen to open the book on. And that is more meaningful than just, they call it like shit posting, than just tossing stuff out there on social media and just kind of doing a stream of consciousness. And that's that can be regrettable. But there's a huge difference between the two types of posting, right? So and when it comes to asking for advice or help, introverts can leverage the preparation, the thought, the contemplation that we put into these opinions and the advice that we give, and the research, the time, the willingness to dig in and have a deeper understanding of things. That only adds to the quality of the advice that you can give, right? I mean, it makes sense. And all of that together, you become someone worth networking with, right? And you're able to have strong connections over the long term with these abilities. And Chris, I'll tell you what, I mean, tell me we aren't a good example of, one path, two introverts. Um, I think I did slide into your DMs after after the first OA challenge, and and I tell you what, if you would have told me then, that, hey, you're gonna have you're gonna do a twice weekly live show, and you're going to have at least 81. This is going to be 81, episode number 81 of a podcast. It would have been really hard to believe. And I certainly wouldn't have been able to figure out how the path would have gone to get there. So, I think we're a good example of the power that introverts wield.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's you know what, it's actually one of the nice things. If you're willing to put in, this little bit of work, it's one of the nice things because you don't know where that path is gonna, meander to. And but if you're willing to go down that path a little ways, you're gonna find some, I think, some good surprises, through it. And now I think that the people who listen to this show, we may have been, preaching to the choir quite a bit today. But if you happen to be one of the people who listen to this episode and you still are like, this is, I don't need to post on social media. I can keep everything close to the vest. I can do this on my own. I don't need anyone to help carry the load. Um, I would I'm going to try to convert you a little bit here. Let me proselytize just a touch. Um, I would think of all of this, the social media, the building in public, the being a reply guy. It is all a form of leverage. Okay. And one of my favorite one of my favorite quotes is Archimedes. Give me a lever long enough, and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I'll move anything, even the world. We teach leverage with using other people's money in the form of credit and things like that to grow your business. We leverage technology to be able to duplicate ourselves and our processes. We leverage other people's time in the form of getting virtual assistants and growing a team to be able to source for you or handle other tasks. This is just another form of leverage. It can be leverage to help you learn faster, leverage to help you find deals quicker, just because you have a relationship. Now, and I don't want you to think about these relationships in such a transactional manner, because then it'll turn you kind of into an inauthentic person, But I mean, at the end of the day, that is that is why we have relationships. It is to be able to use each other as leverage, in a mutually beneficial way. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not making it sound pretty. But at the end of the day, what you're able to do by being able to leverage relationships with each other is everyone gets to win a little bit bigger. And then if you take nothing else away from this, hopefully you can take away that, because it's incredibly powerful. Um, so, Chris, you got a quote of the week this week?
Yeah, I did, and I leveraged AI to help me find one that was applicable. It's from Dale Carnegie, right? And he says you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you.
That is really, really good. I really like that quote.
It's
I don't
spot
know if
on, isn't
you
it?
Yeah, it really is. I don't know if you saw, I this was another thing I posted to social media. Sometimes just posting things that happen in your daily life can be interesting. And I shared a story about how being interested in others, it got me enough information that I probably could have gone out and started a brand new business without
Hmm.
ever paying for a course, without ever doing anything like that. But I walked into a gas station the other day. I filled up my tank, walk into the gas station, go and grab a diet Dr. Pepper or whatever it is. And I just asked the guy behind the counter, "Hey man, is this your business?" Yeah, it is. Oh, cool. Uh, would you recommend a friend of yours to start a business like this? Yeah, I would. What's what's the hard part? What's the best part? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? How long have you been doing this? I I didn't want him to, be interested in me at all. I just wanted him to see that I was interested in him. He answered my questions for like 8 minutes, before a customer walked up, and I'm like, "Hey, you got a customer? I should probably get out of your way." but he just seemed just pleased as punch that someone actually cared enough to learn about his business when everyone else probably could not give a crap about him or his feelings or what he thinks about his business. And I walked away with so much information about running a convenience store that I could probably go and along with the knowledge I have of inventory currently for running an Amazon business, I could go and run a convenience store business too. I'll tell you one thing I learned: the margins are insane on a convenience store business. So it's just arbitrage in person rather than on the internet. So,
Right.
but anyway, this was a good episode. I like this one.
Yeah, me too.
All right. That's the pod, everybody. Until next week, good selling. Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.